Hello, and welcome to Books and the World. I'm your host, Roger Smith. Books in the World is an interview show produced by the Cape Cod Writers Center and the Cape Media Center. The Writers Center was established over 6 decades ago and sponsors a 4-day writers conference every summer here on Cape Cod. The goal of Books in the World is to show how writers, illustrators, publishers, editors, and others in the literary field play their roles in the world of books and other communication media. This show has been broadcast continuously since 1978, making it the longest-running program of its kind in the United States. Today, I am delighted to welcome Kathy Aspden, author of The Mala Beads. And I've got to tell you, The Mala Beads is a fantastic read. I am not the most spiritual person in the world, so I kind of had an okay show me attitude to this whole thing. And I was quite astounded that my end of the book reaction was, okay, I begrudgingly admit that miracles do in fact exist.
You go.
So thank you so much for that. And
thank you, Roger.
just one more item, I've got to tell you that the next thing I did after finishing the book was to pass it on to my wife, who's more of the Mala Beads type, and she loved it as well. So let's start with, what are Mala Beads?
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for being here to interview me. This is wonderful. So the Mala Beads. Mala Beads are an ancient prayer necklace. So it's actually Japa Mala. So Japa means prayer, and Mala means garland or necklace. And they date back to, beyond 9 BC. They are part of sacred geometry. So each necklace has 108 beads plus a guru bead. And there are so many, every culture has a type of prayer bead or something to count out your intentions. In fact, the Catholic rosary beads, which were much, much later, I think in the 13th or 14th century, they also have 108 as a counting bead, although they have specific prayers that are attached to each decade or each 10 beads. With Mala beads, their concept is that you use them to count out the intentional mantra that you will recite, so that you can, each time you say something, you just move it along, and it gives it a count. And as you're actually creating your intention, for me it was, I am happy, I am healthy, I am loved. You take one bead and just pull it toward you, and you're pulling your intention toward you. So that's how it's been done for centuries.
That is just a phenomenal explanation, and I appreciate that. So let's go to the next logical question. I assume those are your Mala beads?
These actually are not my Mala beads.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do Mala beads mean to you, and how did they become the focal point for the book, The Mala Beads?
Thanks for asking that. When I was, like everybody else, going through the pandemic, and I was a mess. My husband was working as a respiratory therapist with, COVID patients all day, and my daughter, who was pregnant with her second child, got COVID toward the end of her pregnancy, and they were making, sounds like we won't be able to let her take the baby home. And my husband was 72, and he should have been the person you were bringing the groceries home to. So I was so filled with anxiety, like a lot of people, but I also wasn't helpful. I was spreading my anxiety like it was Sunday breakfast to everyone I could. Yeah. So my girlfriend, who recognized that, my girlfriend Susie, brought me a Mala bead necklace that she had acquired when she was at the Ekam Temple in India. And we did some mantras, just some things like, Hamsa, just breathing mantras. And then she said, you can use it for anything. You can use it for, so my mantra started out, I'm happy, which is what you always want to be. I am healthy, which is what you always want to be. And I am loved, which is what I had to remind myself that I was, despite how I was behaving. And so And suddenly I felt very connected to there being a bigger picture, to not being in a world of fear, to not thinking that the next bad thing that happened had to happen to us. And it gave me, when you talk about being grounded, it gave me that centered feeling. And I would grab for these all the time when I was starting to feel any kind of anxiety.
Fantastic.
And as that went along, I realized how many mantras were out there and what the mantras were for. They were for peace, or for redemption, or for manifestation.
Ooh.
And I began to think about how manifesting your own reality is important. And that was the reason that the Mala Beads came to be. The Mala Beads, the book.
I'm just so impressed by this, and you've based your book in the COVID era, but many different venues, and I'm
so the
kind of impressed by either you know these places intimately well, or you're very good at making stuff up, and the characters. So let's delve into that.
All right, so the characters all come about pretty organically. The premise of the story is that it begins with one woman who is at the beach. It actually begins with a little two-paragraph passage about how the Mala Beads got their power. And then at the end of that passage, by the fifth day, he could feel the sacred energy incarnating into the beads, creating a bond between himself, the wood, and the supreme consciousness of all that is. At midnight of the seventh day, a golden blue orb entered the cave, a signal that it was done. The guru stopped chanting and placed the beads in a lotus dish. Tomorrow he would prepare them for their journey to North America. For now, he would sleep. And so that's just the little preview that we get. And then we immediately break into the life of Claire, who's at the beach, taking a nap in her car. It's March. She's had a rough month. All she wants to do is soak the sun from the windshield. And suddenly she is in the middle of a robbery. Somebody taps on the window. She wakes up and realizes that they're making the roll down the window gesture, holding a handgun. So even in her half sleep, she realizes that's not normal.
And that's a situation that I dearly love, because Claire, who we don't know from a hill of beans, we're 2 pages into it, she starts negotiating with the bad guy.
Because she wants to keep her purse. She's like, I'll give you all my money, but don't take my purse. There's a lot of good stuff in there.
That's just delightful.
Yeah. And then as she's negotiating with him, she makes a plan for how she's going to empty it of its money. So she says, I'll dump it on my passenger seat. You can go around the other side where you can keep your gun on me, and I will just rifle through everything and try to get all the money out. And she even gives him, she says, hold on a second, I think I have money tucked into the edges of my wallet where I keep my emergency money. So at that point, as she's putting all the money together in a bank envelope, she sees this bag with the Mala Beads in it, and her mind just says immediately, oh, wait, the Mala Beads, it's time to pass them on. And so she passes him this bag along with the money, and she says, I'll give you every penny, no questions asked, and I won't contact the police if you promise to take this bag and follow the directions that are inside the bag. And he's, you're crazy. You're crazy. I've got a gun. I don't have to do anything. And she said, I believe that we all have a choice, and I believe that you will honor my wishes. And then he runs back up the hill, off the beach, and then she reclines the chair and goes back to her nap. So that's how the Mala Beads are passed the first time. And the story is that the Mala Beads go from person to person after I won't even open that, because by the time I open it, I could read what it says right in this book. But we immediately launch right into Nate's story, and Nate's story is
Nate the robber, Nate
the gunman, and he is running up the stairs, and he's breathless because he's not a bad guy. He's not a robber. He didn't intend to rob anybody. He intended to go to the beach and kill himself. And then he saw this pocketbook laying open like an invitation, with whatever money was left in the receipts from her last purchase just scattered on top. And since money was his problem, that's what he did, was decide to rob her. So anyway, that's where we're at.
That
That's
is
the
so
beginning.
delightful. Now, I would my term for this, which may or may not be accurate, would be a connected short story novel.
It's exactly what it's called.
Okay, so what a concept.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Okay,
How
so-
did you get into that whole scene?
So everything. I'm an accidental writer. When an idea hits me, it's not a plan. So I didn't realize I was writing a connected short story novel. I thought I was writing a novel of chapters, and the chapters were, the first chapter is Claire, the second chapter is Nate, the third chapter is Laurie, where he passes the mala beads. But because each chapter in itself created a complete short story with a beginning, middle, end,
Absolutely.
climax, and then the mala beads were passed on to the next person, and sometimes the person was somebody they knew, sometimes it was somebody they came upon that they realized needed these beads. I realized that I'm a girl that thinks I've invented something. Like, oh, I invented this format. Well, I'll just do these, chapters, and they'll all connect, and then the overall arc will create a complete novel. And that's what I think. And then I started researching it and realized that connective short story novels are a thing, like the things they carried, about all the things that were in the pockets of the men that were going off to war, or even the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, where each story was a complete story, but then they connected. And so suddenly I realized that I was just going to let this fly, that at the end of a story, we would break into another life. It wouldn't necessarily be linear. We'd break into a time that actually began maybe before that person prior's story ended,
Sure.
But at some point in it, the passing of the beads would happen, and we would find out what their crisis was. So yeah, that's the basic premise of how that connective short story novel goes.
And these individuals that you have made out of whole cloth, do you know anybody who actually transports kidneys to one person or another?
I've had a very varied life. I started out as a medical secretary. I've owned a hair salon, which is like a giant think tank. I have a lot of friends. I have 3 daughters and 3 son-in-laws and 9 grandchildren. Stuff happens. And I'm a bit of an experience junkie, where whatever the story is, if I hear that somebody's had a miscarriage, I don't think to myself, oh my gosh, that's so sad. I literally feel like I'm going into their shoes. I actually think to myself, how would that feel? How would you feel knowing that you've already been a mother once, so you know the weight of your loss? How would that feel if if your husband wasn't on the same page as you, or I'm a true overthinker.
So your empathy really
And I have a tremendous amount of empathy.
swirls and swirls.
And I feel like putting myself in others' shoes is, it's a mixed blessing. Sometimes I'm in somebody's misery more than I need to be, because I can't stand what they're going through.
And getting this out on the page, was that part of almost a therapeutic process for you?
Oh, definitely. Everything I've ever written has been very cathartic. My first 2 novels, I realized I was writing about my marriage. I was like,
wow.
There you go. There you go. You got those out of the way. And then this novel, because it takes place all over the United States and
British Columbia.
And in British Columbia, it gave me an opportunity to make it a true multicultural read.
Yes.
Which is just always a delight for me. I want to know all of it. I want to know everything about any lifestyle that somebody else is in. So.
And as a person who presents herself as a white female, cisgender female, did you have any difficulty getting into Native American persona?
I mean, there are people that will tell you that you're not, if you're a white woman, you can't write about a black man, or you can't write about a Native American culture, and yet, for me, because we're all so connected, we're so completely connected in our experiences, and our sorrows, and our desires, and the things that we count as important to our lives. That's step number one. You're already in that story with them. And then when you are working at understanding what that means culturally to them, so much of it is research. So much of it for me is images. I will actually, if I'm in Vacaville, California, which I've never been to, and I'm talking about a fire at a horse ranch, or a fire that's actually going to start crowding out this horse ranch, and they have to evacuate. The first thing I do is look up everything I can about that town. I'll look up the demographics. I'll go on MapQuest and look up the map. I'll try to get a topographical study of it, like where are the mountains? Where would you flee? If it was the quail fire, what direction would it be coming into, and how would it push you? And then how would you actually take care of that? So that's number one. And then number two is, oh my gosh, my character has told me that they are from a tribe in that area, actually in the San Francisco Bay Area. So then you start looking up that tribe, and you pull out as many images as you can. What does the wedding food look like for that tribe? What is it? What is their solidarity to purpose and to the land? And so it's like anything else. I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV. I mean, it's like anything else where you tend to just put yourself into that immersive character so that you don't think about, do I have the right to this story? Do I have the right to write this story? You think, I hope I've done it justice. I hope I've gotten it right. I hope that somebody feels moved by it, but also feels connected to it because they happen to be from that demographic. So yeah, and that's worked for everything, whether you're a transgender woman or somebody who's experienced, genital mutilation, or you're a man who is an alcoholic. If you put yourself in their shoes in a way that you can literally shut your eyes and visualize, I think you can't go wrong because it's just coming from a sincere heart.
I've got a comment and I've got a question.
Okay.
Number one, your description of your research sounds what I refer to myself as the rabbit hole, where you start and you go, holy mackerel, and you do twisty-turny and come up maybe with
Something
three
different.
valid sentences.
Yep.
But my question is, do your characters ever speak to you and take you in a place that you didn't expect?
I have no control over this. I mean, I feel, and when I say I have no control, maybe, but I don't.
I understand.
I think every single character has their journey, and they're wanting to tell you where they want to go and what it's like and what their plan is. And you just have to follow along and research your way out of it. I know that for me, the whole process of character development is not something I consciously do, because I am such a lover of humanity and mankind that I actually, I mean, sure, they might be like, oh, that trait reminds me of so-and-so, or this might be a little bit like such and such. But on the whole, they're all so unique and individual that I feel like I just kind of go along for the ride.
Good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, so.
And at what time of day do you get your inspiration? When do you start writing?
All right,
When do you
so
wrap up?
I wish I could tell you that I was the most organized human being, but I'm not. So I like to write in the morning if I've written the night before, because I can write the night before, and I type. So I'm at the computer and I type, and because handwriting is never fast enough for what it is I'm thinking. And then I can literally, like, I've actually typed, I've probably done 150 words on some topic and then realized, wait, that's not where they want me to go. So I will actually copy and paste that in a folder that I have that says, this is for later. It might be applicable to somebody else, but it's not theirs. And so I'll go as far as I can go, and then I will think about them when I go to bed. And I kind of think about the story, I think about where it's at, and then I always feel like information is downloaded to me in my sleep. Because I wake up with a problem solved. And I want to say there's never been a problem that's taken me more than a good nap or a bath to take care of. I don't dwindle. When I write, it's more of a bloodletting. I mean, it's really awful because I'm very unavailable. I'm unavailable when the phone rings. I'm unavailable when my kids need me. Actually, this is confirmation that what they believe to be true is true, so I won't let them see this actual interview. But I have been very much so that I start to, my world becomes the book, and I become less and less engaged in what's happening in the real world, except as it pertains to my book. And that's why my process is pretty fast. I mean, this was begun in I think it was August it was actually May of 2020, and I was pitching this in January of 2021.
Wow.
So that's how it happens for me. I'm not, I'm not. When people talk about writer's block, I can sympathize because, again, it's easy to put yourself in somebody's shoes. I mean, I get writer's block if I have to write some letter to somebody I don't want to write. But as far as writer's block for my work, it's never.
That's not you.
It's never been a thing. I don't even understand it. Mine is more like too many words, too little time. Because in between, if I'm like, oh my gosh, now something else has attracted my attention, and so I'm going to write this short script. Instead of because I've got, what I would consider a block of 2 days. Let me just try to throw a script in and then I'll go back to this. It's not.
Let's take a tangent onto script for a moment.
Yeah.
Now, because you have been a script writer, I would say each of these short stories, I mean, you've summed up an entire life in a matter of pages.
Yeah.
So there's got to be some script writing skill that you have transmogrified into this
book. It definitely creates an ability to take a small number of words and create a large picture. And for me, that was when I started writing novels instead of screenplays. I was like, oh my gosh, now I can actually say how they feel. I can actually get in your head, as opposed to giving you a gesture that tells you how you feel. And I especially found the screenwriting helpful with this novel because some of these chapters are 6 pages. I think the longest chapter is 15 pages, maybe, somewhere in that family. And so the shorter, the ability to tell you who a person is as quickly as possible to get you into their story is something that I didn't have to practice or figure out. So it really did make it easy to write this kind of format. But yeah, I would have, I think to start out as a screenwriter was absolutely a genius accident, Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, that's good. So you've mentioned your husband, your children, and your grandchildren. Where do they play into this whole scene?
Yeah,
besides
I think everybody,
being neglected,
besides
apparently.
being neglected, everybody understands that I am exhaustive when I'm involved in something, and I think that they, as far as what parts of them are in the book, they know they know what's going to be in there. If I've had a particularly lovely argument with one of my children in the past, some aspect of that behavior is going to be in there. If I had some emotions that were brought up by some incident in my marriage, it's not going to be the same scenario, but it's going to be the identical, yes, the heart feeling that you feel while you're in some kind of a and then there are certain things that are actually almost verbatim. There's a character in this book that has agoraphobia. My mother had agoraphobia. So when we were growing up, she pretty much, for a certain amount of time, didn't leave the house. My dad would pick us up and bring us to our after-school adventures, whatever it was. And we knew it because, of course, it was just how it was. But we didn't really think too much about it because we didn't really care unless it applied to us getting a ride to the mall. And so so later on, when I was delving into this character and what that might be like, I was like, oh my gosh, when I thought about what my mother might have gone through. And this particular character is perfectly happy. She's in a pandemic. It's actually easier
Sure.
to order food.
It's built for her.
Yes, it's built for her. This was her, she's in her element finally. But then she gets an enormous, like terrible infected tooth. And she's got to go to the dentist. I mean, she's on the antibiotics, but she's got to go to the dentist. And so her story is that we are with her while she spends the night, perusing YouTube to try to find out how you pull your own tooth. And when you think about the desperation in that, it's an everyday story, a toothache, but when you add the layers of what somebody might go through with fear and not being able to, and it turns out to be her hygienist who comes by because she's lied and said the tooth fell out, and the hygienist is like, oh my gosh, we have to at least make sure that the whole tooth came out. And so she comes to take a picture for the doctor, and she drops off, more antibiotics and something else that she might need, and she's the one that passes along the beads to her. So they all kind of pass along in their own very organic way. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, we're running out of time, and I've got to ask you, of your 30 characters, which one is your favorite?
So the ones that have had really hard stories, I think, always touch me. But one of my favorites is a kid named Chili. He's graduating from high school. His mother, who is just completely locks down all the information about he doesn't know who his father is. His whole journey is that he wants to know who he is, and it takes a few twists and turns. But he is every kid you meet who is like, trying to make his way through it all without totally blowing up his life, And there's a little part of him that is every one of my children, every one of my son-in-laws, and all of my grandchildren.
Wow.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, if we just tantalize our viewers and they can't wait to find out more about Kathy Aspden, how do they find you?
Okay, so my website has everything. My website is as much a picture of the ADD in my head as anything else is. It has some screenplays. It has all the information about how to contact me. It has speaking engagement information, and it has everything in it. And it's www.kathyaspden.com. So
ASPDEN.
ASPDEN, yeah.
Excellent. And Kathy with a K.
And Kathy with a K.
We are good to go. Well,
right.
This has been delightful. I've really enjoyed myself, and I've learned a ton. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Raj. This was wonderful.
It's been my pleasure. So, if you've enjoyed this video and would like to see more, you'll find links to them through our website, capecodwriterscenter.org, through our Facebook page, and on YouTube. Thank you for watching Books in the World.